Hey there, it's Dr. Deb, and welcome to another show. This week we're talking about how can I win back my partner's affection? And here's a real question I have on that. Why do you want to? Like, what's not working? What happened? Why is it that you want to win that person's affection back and they don't want to win yours back? Did you do something wrong? See, these are all questions I have because one of the things that the question itself, the way it's worded, bothers me about is that it makes me feel like you're kind of desperate. Like in a normal, healthy marriage, you wouldn't have to win their affection. Did you do something wrong? Like, did you cheat? Did you get cold? Did you nag and criticize? What did you do that makes you feel like you lost their affection? And here's another question that goes along with that. I have seen a profile of abusers over and over and over again that goes like this. A partner, usually it's the wife for the husband because that's how it is, but women can be this way too. But a partner complains and says, "My feelings are hurt. You didn't remember my birthday. You didn't give me a present for our anniversary." Something, you don't help enough in the kitchen or with the kids. These are complaints, yes, but they're normal. I mean, it's a normal expectation that on a birthday you'll get an acknowledgement, if not a fancy present. Not everyone can afford something fancy, but at least a card, a cake. So what's going on? So with abusers, here's the problem. An abuser grew up being abused, meaning they never had a sense of self. The abuser doesn't know that he or she is a good person. The abuser doesn't know what's good about them at all. So when they hear a complaint like this, especially if it's said often, because things come up often, like last week you didn't help with the kids, the week before you didn't help with the kids, and the week before that, you know what I mean? If it's said often because you, the person speaking, feels hurt, here's what happens. The abuser who doesn't have what to fall back on and can't say to themselves even, "No, I'm a good person. I remembered you. I remember the kids. I took care of all the things we need." The abuser can't do that because they haven't got what to fall back on. And it's not their fault. No one ever asked to be abused, and guaranteed abusers were abused, even if it was by neglect or emotional neglect. It's still abuse, right? And neglect is abuse. So the abuser didn't ask for this, but now they come into the marriage without having a substance in their own mind of who they are. So when they get criticized, what do they have to, in their own mind, to justify a response? They don't. The only response they can possibly make to protect their skin is to get mad at you, get defensive, get argumentative. Do you see where I'm coming from here? The abuser can't help doing that because if they had to look at themselves, they would be looking inside at this dark chasm, this empty space where their soul should be. At least that's what they think. It isn't true, by the way. For sure it isn't true. I've worked with hundreds of abusers. They're just like anybody else. only they don't know it because all they know is the pain that they feel and felt, and they don't know how to live a life normally because they didn't have any role models teaching them. So they struggle a lot and they make mistakes. Okay, fine, we all make mistakes. If a Martian dropped out of the sky and had to make their way around, you'd feel sorry for them. You wouldn't complain about what they didn't know. Well, it's no different with an abuser. They don't know because they don't know. It's not their fault. But for them, from their perspective, they have to put up some barriers against this. It's pretty harsh. So if they're not behaving right and you're telling them you're hurt, it's not helping. So if your spouse has a history and background that you know they were abused, even if you don't get what it means, take my word for it. It's not going to help them or your situation for you to tell them what they're doing wrong. So that's one example of maybe why they're not being affectionate. Maybe they don't even know that they should be affectionate or how to be affectionate. But assuming that's not the case and they do know how, maybe they just don't like the fact that you've complained so much. Again, it's not your fault either. You have a perfectly legitimate right to want a present on your birthday, or help with the kids, or help making dinner once in a while too. Why should it only be your job? But that is where you have a problem because you can't actually ask for it. So here are some of the other possibilities that may have caused your affection or their affection from them to you to be gone. Another possibility is that they can't even understand a nice way of putting something and they only hear criticisms. You could be talking about the neighbor down the street and they'll think that you're talking about them. You could say something like, I don't understand how such a thing could be. And right away they're going to be mad at me. And you're not. You're talking about something else, something that happened in China, but they hear it as criticism because that is what they were always used to growing up. Now, here's another possibility, let's face it. You wanted something that you didn't get and you turned outside of the marriage to get it. Well, that's no good, and that would explain why you lost their affection. Or another possibility, because they don't feel like they have an ego, something that they have to be proud of who they are, they turned outside the marriage. Not because of you, but because they needed filling. And let me tell you, it won't work. Going outside the marriage won't work any better to fill them up than marrying you did, because here they aren't. Am I making sense, guys? I want to know. Am I making sense? Okay, let me go on. What not to do. What you should not do when you feel like you've lost their affection, they don't have that feeling for you anymore. Don't explain what you need. Explaining your needs will not produce feelings. And the more you explain, the more you're going to turn them off, especially if they have no clue what you're talking about, because a person who has lost affection and doesn't really know what it is isn't going to get it because you explain it. If they do know what it is and they used to be affectionate, something is going on, and your explanations are not going to solve the mystery. Number 2, don't beg and cry. As little kids, it worked. Oh, can I please have that toy? Oh, please. And mom finally gives in because she's so tired of hearing this. Does not work in a marriage. Begging and crying makes you look to your partner as needy. And there is nothing more unattractive than that. You look and seem and appear to be needy just because you're in this vulnerable, weak place in their eyes of begging and crying. Now, the reality is there is nothing wrong with being vulnerable, and very frankly, being vulnerable takes courage. It's not weakness at all. But to someone who does not know how to give affection or has withheld it for some reason, and I just guessed a few things as possibilities, but who knows, to that person who's already turned off, whose heart is a little bit hardened to you, then being needy and looking vulnerable is not going to work at all. Because from their point of view, you're draining them. For some reason, they lost their affection. As I said, whether it was something you did or something lacking inside of them, all you're doing is draining them. If they need to be filled up, if their heart needs filling up, don't drain them more. Does that make sense, guys? Don't drain them more. Another thing you should not do, obviously, is blame, accuse, criticize, get angry, lose it. None of those things are going to work. You may feel slighted and you may feel hurt and you may feel that's totally unfair for all that you have done that is so good and so wonderful and so praiseworthy. But it won't work. Because let's face it, people don't feel warm and fuzzy toward each other because they got a slap on the wrist for it. Doesn't work. Another thing not to do is disconnect and numb out. That may be very helpful for you to feel better or not feel anything at all, right? Numbing is not exactly feeling. That may be helpful for you, but it's absolutely not going to work. So what should you do? What is the answer? Of course, I always say get into therapy. But the reality is not everyone can get into therapy. Not every person who's married has a spouse that wants to go to therapy. So what do? The first thing you should do is work on yourself. Why? Why do I say that? If you love yourself and you're kind to yourself, you will be able to have more of a big picture look, perspective on how your partner is treating you. And that perspective goes a long, long way. When your partner has and you have perspective, you can say to yourself, my partner doesn't understand. They don't get it. I wish they did, but they don't. So that at least you aren't taking it personally. You're not feeling like it's a slight against you. Because 9 times out of 10, it is not. On that 10th time, it could be something you're doing. That's why I always say come in together. If you're going to do family therapy, come in together and don't push your spouse, I was going to say husband, it could be a wife, into therapy without you being part of it. Because I have never seen some couple where someone does not react poorly to whatever is dished out. It takes 2 to make a mess. It just does. Even if one person is 90% responsible, the other person responds the wrong way. And sometimes, let's face it, there's no right way. This is true too. No matter what you do is not going to work, which is why I say that's where therapy comes in. So then how do you get them into therapy? What do? I say the beginning of this is to stop looking at all your needs that aren't met and all the affection that you want that you're not getting, and look at them and understand where they are coming from. Now, that may be very hard if they're not telling you, I don't know. But try. Ask questions, have a conversation, tell them you care, you want to see what's going on with them. Notice what they do, notice how they behave, notice where they go and what their actions are. Make coming home a pleasant experience for both of you. Have good conversations, not bad ones. Again, this is not easy. Absolutely not. Which is why therapy helps, or my course helps. Because my course at least gives you the tools that you need. Whether you use them or not, that's something else. But it gives you the tools so that at least you have some idea, and they do too. And the beauty of the course is that when they're learning the tools, no one's putting them on the spot. No one's asking them deep questions that they don't want to answer. So that's a little bit better in terms of them not feeling put on the spot than therapy would be. And although this is usually a half hour, I've said everything I want to say about this. So have a wonderful evening, everyone.